Alary is a storyteller and educator, a trained theologian and biblical scholar. And like her other books that look deeper at Lent, Advent, and Pentecost, Rise is not just an Easter book, but one that connects the deep truths in the Eastertide narratives and the lived realities of children's lives. It's part of the Circle of Wonder series. Laura, welcome back. It's Rise, A Child's Guide to Eastertide. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
So for those who don't use this term often, actually explain Eastertide for us.
Okay, so Eastertide is the name for the season that follows what we think of as Easter. So there's Easter Sunday, our big celebration. And in fact, when I was a child, in my mind, that was Easter. It was Easter Sunday and then moving on. In fact, Eastertide is the great 50 days of Easter that follows, leading us toward Ascension and Pentecost. So, and I have to confess, if there's people out there who are not familiar with this term, don't feel bad, because actually, as you said, this is the fourth book in a series. I was sort of thinking that I had covered Easter, and it was my son who said to me, "When are you going to write a book about Easter?" And I said, "Well, the Lent one, Make Room, concludes on Easter Sunday." And he said, "But what about the rest of it?" And so it took him to remind me that, oh, yes, Easter Sunday is just the first day in a whole season.
And I think especially if churches are following that calendar and liturgy, then it ties in with that. So families and kids it's really sinking in. It all kind of comes together as this is, like you said, part of a bigger thing that we celebrate and recognize. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about the word rise in this book and kind of what was your reasoning for that and your meaning here?
I struggled for a long time to come up with that single word. I wanted, because the subtitles of these books are so long, I like to use a single word as the main title, with the exception of Make Room. But the others are Look and Breathe. So I thought, okay, what is a word that really represents or conveys the core message of this season? And I liked Rise because of its association with resurrection, but also the broader understanding of resurrection that I'm trying to convey in this book. So, getting up when you fall down, beginning again, the imagery of the butterfly taking off. Like there are so many word pictures that single word carries.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you already just kind of started in with this already, but the resurrection understanding, I think, also needs some clarifying. It's not just this thing that Jesus did, this thing that's in the future. It's a now thing. So can you elaborate on that, but also explain what does it mean to practice resurrection?
Yes. So a number of big questions contained in that one question.
Take it how you will.
I would say that each book in this series has kind of a core question. This one has two. One of them is, what is resurrection and what does it have to do with me? And so when I was thinking about Eastertide as a child and my own experience of Easter as a child, that was the part it was hard to connect to, because this strange and mysterious story about Jesus felt so alien or so foreign to my own experience. And so I started thinking, okay, how do I talk about this season of new life and new beginnings with children in a way that allows that experience of resurrection to be part of their lives here and now, which I think is really critical when it comes to engaging Bible and theology. And then the other question is, where do we see the risen Jesus? And that's kind of the dual nature of this season, because on the one hand, we're celebrating new life, fresh starts, new beginnings. On the other hand, we're preparing for Ascension and Pentecost, this time when in the story, Jesus goes away, but he goes away so that the Spirit can come and he can be present in a new way. But that intervening time is a strange time for his friends and followers, because they have to learn to look for him in new places and see him in new ways. So Eastertide is both this joyful celebration, but also a time to get ready for that transition.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite lines in the book is, "It seems like Jesus is playing hide and seek, making his friends look for him until they can see him everywhere."
Yeah, I liked that. I thought it was a very playful image, and one that that we can connect to, both as children and as adults.
Now, if I remember part of your story, you had finished your PhD and then you became a mom. And there was a struggle there for a bit, kind of wondering, this isn't what I thought was going to happen. How do I apply this? And then you kind of realize, okay, maybe I can do the same, apply the same things, but in a different way. So I think of that, and I think of the word rise together. Do you want to share some encouragement to our listeners, adults and kids, and kind of how that can practically look in our own lives, just seeing things arising differently than what we originally thought?
Yeah, that's thank you for mentioning that, because it's a perfect example from my own life of trying really hard to be open to new possibilities. And you asked me before, what does it look like to practice resurrection? I didn't really answer. So now what I'll say is, I think part of practicing resurrection is trying to keep our eyes open and our minds open to possibilities of growth that might look very different from what we hoped for or expected. And in my case, I kind of had a vision for how my life was going to play out, and an academic career and so on. But then I made some different choices, and ones that took me along paths that I couldn't have anticipated, but which have been very joyful and very life-giving for me. I wouldn't be here talking to you about a new book had I gone a different route. So I consider that kind of personal example of resurrection, and I think the more we get in the habit of looking for those types of things, the more we see them.
Would you say that that's what you mean when you say we need to be Easter people, or is there a different meaning in that term?
That's certainly a big part of it. Is living from this place of hopefulness and openness to what could be possible.
So what else can we expect in this Circle of Wonder series? Do you want to just give us a bit more of what your heart has been, and if there's anything we can look forward to? What are we missing?
Well, if you ask me to dream, I spent quite a bit of time thinking about Epiphany, which although technically it's not a season, it's a day, but some churches do treat it as a season because it has some amazing themes. So I've kind of been playing around with that a little bit. I honestly don't know what's going to happen next. Like I say, I actually thought I was done when I thought about the 3 great days, Christmas, Easter, Pentecost. I thought, okay, I've traveled around the circle. And it was my son who kind of prompted me to go further. So, speaking of openness, I guess I'm open. Open to other possibilities. I have really enjoyed kind of playing with the ideas and symbols and images of Epiphany. I'd love to do something around All Hallows Tide as well. All Hallows, All Saints, All Souls. I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, but it's a significant time in the church calendar.
And one that probably needs some explaining too, I think, for a lot of people.
I think so. So who knows?
Yeah. No, I love that. I can see that's the educator heart in you, is wanting kids to have a better understanding of these things so that we don't just celebrate them as a holiday and then we move past them, but that there's this deeper meaning for us as followers of Jesus. So I just really appreciate the space that you're in, Laura. Thank you for your time again today. Again, it's called Rise, A Child's Guide to Eastertide, part of the Circle of Wonder series. Thanks, Laura.
My pleasure.